Welcome back to this 5-part series on my favorite real estate investment for 2022, which if you watch the previous videos, you know is short-term rentals. I've already talked about the different ways you can do it in part 2. Today, I'm going to talk about how to know you're getting the right deal. Let's go. All right, so if you decide to get into the short-term rental game, you need to know how to find out if it is a good deal. This is true, by the way, whether you are doing co-hosting, arbitrage, or buying it, which I think everyone should do a little of. Step 1, estimate your revenue. All right, you need to figure out how much profit this is going to potentially generate. That starts with the top line. How much revenue is it going to bring in? A couple ways I do this. Step 1, I go to a site called airdna.co. That's airdna.co. On that site, all right, and by the way, there's free levels on there, there's paid levels. I've only used the free level, all right? I think with the paid, you get more analytics, but with the free level, you can go in, type in an address, type in the number of beds and baths, and it will give you an estimate of the revenue, the occupancy rates, the average daily rate, as well as the seasonality. It'll actually track, you know, in this month, this time of year, you should get this much revenue as opposed to this month, right? So it gives you all of that. Second step, right, because airdna.co is a great way to start. The second part of this is to actually go on the sites themselves where the listings are. So that's gonna be Airbnb, VRBO, maybe bookings.com, right? Look at a couple of the major ones to focus on though are Airbnb and VRBO. Go on there and actually look at what's available during different times of the year. Click on the listings, you know, look through, see how nice they are, see what features and amenities and benefits that they offer, and see what their rates are, right? When you have that data plus what you get from airdna.co, you should have a good estimate of the revenue it will bring in. Step 2, you gotta estimate your cost. If you are gonna rent the place, your costs are going to be what the monthly rent is. If you're buying it, it's gonna be what your mortgage, taxes, and insurance are. By the way, you gotta make sure you get the right insurance. You can't just get normal property insurance. You gotta get a policy that specifies you're allowed to do short-term rentals. That's an important step, so don't skip on that. That insurance usually is a little bit more expensive than normal property insurance, so you wanna make sure you're baking that cost in to your overall equation. Also included in your estimated expenses are gonna be your city and local taxes. They like to get a cut of it, right? Oftentimes Airbnb takes the money directly and pays those taxes, but sometimes there's extra taxes or fees that as the host you have to pay that they don't collect, so you need to account for that. Licensing fees, management fees if you're gonna hire a management company, your utility expenses, so water, sewer, trash, electric, all of that stuff that normally you might not have to pay for on a long-term rental situation, you're gonna have to pay for it, all right? Same with internet, cable, if you're gonna get that. So you gotta look at all the expenses that it will take to keep that house, you know, functioning the same way it would as if you were living in it. All right, once you've done that, you should have a good estimation of what your monthly cash flow and profit should be. All right, if you're doing Airbnb arbitrage, which I explained in part 2 previous video, you wanna make sure that the short-term revenue is gonna be about 2.5 to 3 times what the long-term rental rate is. If you are buying the property, you wanna make sure that you're at least a 15% cash on cash return with the ability to juice that up to 20, 25%. That's what you should be shooting for on the properties that you actually purchase. Step 3, you gotta look at the regulatory environment, all right? That's gonna be your state, your local laws, as well as HOA if there is any, all right? You wanna make sure you're not buying in a place that's getting more restrictive or more laws, or that, you know, potentially you might not be allowed to do it. So make sure you pay attention to the regulatory environment. And step 4, the seasonality, all right? If you have really good months in some places, and then really bad months other times of the year, make sure you plan for that. All right, make sure you're holding back reserves. I think you should come up with an overall plan too from the beginning. You know, even before you do your first unit. Like if you buy 5 that are, you know, do really well in the winter but not as much in the summer, well, can you buy 5 somewhere else that are opposite of that? All right? Or do you want to look at areas that are year-round? Places like South Florida don't have as much seasonality as a lot of other places do. So make sure you look at the seasonality and come up with a plan to make sure you're either balancing it out or you're reserving for the low month. In the next part, I'm gonna show you how to maximize your returns. So stick around and make sure you hit that subscribe button.